Ga i ddiolch yn lle cyntaf i'r rheini oedd yn rhedeg gweithdai rwan. Mae'n amlwg bod wedi bod yn llwyddiannus a mae'r amser dwi'n siŵr wedi mynd yn sydyn iawn. Mi gychwynnon ni pnawn yma drwy wrando ar brofiadau Karen McCluskey o'r Alban. A dwi'n siŵr bod ni gyd wedi'n ysbrydoli gynnu hi. Gen i'w chyflwyniad hi yn sôn am yr heriau a'r llwyddiannau iddi hi fel un oedd yn arwain ar wasanaeth pwysig iawn yn yr Alban. A bu oedd yn haro fi fel chithau dwi'n siŵr o wrando arni hi oedd nad oedd hi ddim wedi colli golwg am eiliad o'r bobl ifanc, o bobl yr Alban, o'r hyn oedd yn digwydd mewn cymdeithas yn yr Alban. A dwi'n siŵr bod hwnna'n rhywbeth sydd rhaid i ni sicrhau nad ydym ni chwaith yn colli golwg arno fo. Oedd hi hefyd yn sôn am y cyd-destun gwleidyddol, a maen nhw mewn lle gwahanol yn wleidyddol i ni yn fwy wedi pasio stage da ni yno fo, o fod yn creu deddfwriaeth, a maen nhw mewn cyfnod o weithredu. A mae'n dda i ni i glywed o wledydd eraill, a gwlad fel yr Alban yn enwedig, sydd mewn cyfnod hanesyddol o draws newid, sydd yn mynd i fod yn ddiddorol i wylio, a maen nhw'n gallu mynd amdani o ran cyfleoedd ar hyn o bryd. Ac o'm mhrofiad i o weithio hefo'r Alban, a gweithio mewn llawer o bartneriaethau peder gwlad, maen nhw ers tro wedi bod yn sôn am tîm Scotland, sef pawb ar draws y gwasanaethau cyhoeddus yn canolbwyntio fel un tîm ar ganlyniadau a phrofiadau gwell i bobl yr Alban. A dwi'n meddwl mae dyna beth ni i gyd yn trio i wneud hefyd, a dyna yn hamcan ni yn y gynhadledd yma. Da ni yma yn gynhadledd gwasanaethau cymdeithasol Cymru ar gyfnod o draws newid i ni hefyd. A da ni'n gwybod beth ydy'r heriau a'r cyfleoedd sydd o'n blaenau ni. A mae'n gyfle i ni pnawn yma i edrych ar be ydy'r heriau, y nodweddion a'r weinyddiaeth sydd gennym ni hangen ar gyfer cyfnod felly. Mae'n galw am i ni gydweithio fel arweinwyr ar draws ffiniau ac ar draws trefn arferol. A dydy gweithio mewn partneriaeth ddim yn newydd i ni fel gwasanaethau cymdeithasol. Mae'n rhywbeth dyn ni wedi arfer i wneud, ond ydym ni'n wneud o'n y ffordd iawn ac efo'r ffocws iawn ydy'r her. Oedd Karen yn sôn llawer yn ei chyflwyniad hi am bod yn serious ynglyn â'r ffocws, gan beidio colli golwg ar y canlyniadau gwell i bobl ifanc yn yr Alban. A dwi'n meddwl bod fy her i ni, yma, yn y gynhadledd yma, ac yn y bartneriaeth a'r weinyddiaeth da ni'n rhan ohono fo, i wneud yn siŵr bod ni yn rhoi sylw dyledus i blant a phobl ifanc yn ogystal ac i bobl hyn yn cymunedau ni, fel bod ni'n creu gwlad lle mae pobl ifanc yn wirioneddol gredu bod ni fel arweinwyr yn malio amdanyn nhw ac yn trio sicrhau dyfodol gwell iddyn nhw. Un o'r pethau sydd wedi'n haro fi o edrych ar weledigaeth yng Nghymru ar gyfer y dyfodol ydy bod ni'n cydnabod bod ni yn wynebu heriau cymleth a bod nifer ohonyn nhw'n rhaid ni wedi etifeddu. Ond i ni fel arweinwyr, fel oedd Karen yn dweud, mae gennym ni'r dewis plaen bod yn arwain, yn dilyn neu symud o'r ffordd. A'r hyn sydd yn bwysig i ni ydy sicrhau bod ni ddim yn gadael yr un set o issues i'r genhedlaeth nesaf i fynd yr afel enw. Bod ni, tra da ni yn cymryd yr awennau fel arweinwyr, wedi mynd i'r afael i ddelio hefo'r ei heriau cymleth, fel bod ni wedi adeiladu hefo'n gilydd wlad well, iachach, hapusach, mwy dwyieithog efo economi llywyrchus ac awyrgylch mwy gwityn ar gyfer pawb. A mae'r tri person sydd yma ar y llwyfan pnawn yma yn mynd i fod yn edrych hefo ni ar i'w profiad nhw, i'w cyfraniad nhw, eu gweledigaeth nhw fel arweinwyr. Tri yn dod o bersbectif gwahanol yn y bartneriaeth pwysig iawn i ni wrth bwrw ymlaen efo'r agenda da ni yn atebol amdani. Helen Paterson, o bersbectif Prifweithredwr Wrexham. Judith, Paget fel Prifweithredwr o bersbectif iechyd, a Duncan Forbes bersbectif tai. A bydd y tri yn dod yma i'r podium i siarad yn fyr am i'w syniadau nhw, i'w meddyliau nhw, a byddwn ni ar ôl i'r tri siarad gobeithio yn gallu agor hyn i fyny drafodaeth rhwngthyn ni am gilydd. Gobeithio bod gennych chi gwestiynau yn barod i ni fod yn symud ymlaen yn y meddyliau ni'n hunain hefo'n gilydd i sut gallwn ni adeiladu'r hyn da ni wedi glywed hyd yma. Croeso cynnes da chi, Helen.
Good afternoon, Pranda, and I wish I was speaking to you in Welsh so that you could hear that fabulous translation because it was so dynamic and so inspiring in the way it was actually translated, so thank you very much for that. So I want to take the opportunity this afternoon to, as we've been asked, reflect on partnership working and the role of leadership in the wellbeing agenda, and then a bit of self-indulgence, if you don't mind, around my own personal leadership contribution as I see it. So I believe that the responsibility towards our population is not, and it cannot be, the sole responsibility of any one organisation, but it must be a partnership between a range of organisations, communities and individuals. And our efforts moving forward when developing services and meeting need must reflect a partnership approach which is strongly embedded into the practice and culture of all our organisations. Partnerships and joint working in health and social care have been championed, frankly, by successive governments since the 1960s. However, integration has been difficult to implement, and there has been a legacy of what I would call failed attempts. So clearly Wrexham's in North Wales, so you wouldn't be at all surprised if I focus on North Wales, and we've had a long history of partnership working across a range of partners, health, social care, third voluntary sectors, and we have succeeded in improving healthcare and social care and well-being of individuals. And we have supported people to live independently within their own homes and their communities. However, to meet the requirements and aspirations of the Social Services Wellbeing Act, as well as to enable us to do the right thing by the people we serve, there is a need for us to increase the pace and the scale of our partnership working. Frankly, we need to do more, quicker, and for and with more people. No challenge then. So let me talk to you a little bit about leadership. And you'd expect that to be important to me, wouldn't you? Leadership, I think, is crucial in partnership working, and there's a role for leaders to promote collaboration and to redefine the relationships between key stakeholders. And it was really interesting to listen to Karen talk about people and relationship. She didn't talk much about structures, did she? We need to promote a joint vision, purpose, and culture of collaborative working. I am going to talk about governance. The newly established governance structures across Wales, both nationally and regionally, name and need, the partnership forums and the leadership groups provide a strong basis on which this impetus can be fostered. And they enable this strong culture of partnership working. But they are not an end in themselves. They give an opportunity to agree on a shared vision that's beyond organisational need and a level of accountability that thinks about the well-being of citizens. Whilst austerity is taking its toll on organisations, it can bring about opportunities. Opportunities to embrace change, work differently, to work together, promote strong leadership skills across our organisations and communities so that we can focus on improving well-being, not only for those that come in contact with our services, but for the wider population, particularly ensuring that they don't come into services prematurely. I'm sure we're all aware of the saying, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got. I think more appropriately in reality today it goes, if we always do what we've always done, the chances are we won't even get what we've always got, we'll get less. So the opportunities created in challenging times force us to seek new ways of working together, of challenging the traditional boundaries and structures, to embrace change, all at a time when maybe the fear of change is perhaps at its highest for us as organisations and for us as individuals. Challenging times give us the impetus to work together differently. And those of you in the room that already know me know that I love a challenge and I love change. So I'm loving the change agenda. For true partnerships to flourish, there's a need to recognise and accept the need to work in partnership in the first place. It seems so obvious, but I think it has to be said. There must be strong leadership throughout the organisations, as well as a commitment and an ownership to the partnership agenda. Trust, there's the word. Trust between individuals and organisations must be developed and maintained, along with support and empowerment to enable individuals to take more control over their own health, well-being and social care. So for me, it's clear that integration and closer multi-agency working is not about organisational structures. It is about people and it's about improved outcomes. So ideally, partners working together hear this voice back from users of services that says, my care is planned by me, with people working together to understand me, my family and my carers. I'm given control and services are brought together to achieve the outcomes that are important to me. So in North Wales, our statement of intent provides a vision for North Wales of partnership working. It's making sure that it's about well-being of citizens and service delivery is locality based. It talks about citizen-centred, co-produced services. We're putting in explicit governance and accountability, and we're really focusing on outcomes. We've completed our self-assessment of readiness for the implementation of the Act, and we know that we can't do it without working on a regional basis with our partners. And we also know there's areas that we need to address better, commissioning and assessment to maximise independence and wellbeing being two. We know that success in these areas we can't do alone. It can only work through a partnership approach to the solutions. Monies made available through the Welsh Government Intermediate Care Fund have enabled us to make a real commitment to the statements of intent, particularly pump primary services. Let me give you some examples. So an example from the Wrexham area, the number of people supported to either overcome the need for a hospital admission or to return home sooner, or to overcome the need for a permanent residential placement has increased from 187 people last year to 1,351 this year. And this has been achieved by expanding existing teams, the existing multi-agency intermediate care team, recruiting nurse navigators within the emergency department and the medical assessment unit in our hospital, and procuring short stay, step up and down beds within our residential care homes. But frankly, this success is not about the metrics. It's not about the numbers. Success is partly about the closer working between partners and a greater sense about us being in it together and all our responsibility and the recognition of working together. And again, of course, it goes without saying, but I am going to say it, the most important measure of our success is how we support the people we serve, never mind the numbers. So to serve people more and to be more people and place focused, I believe we need to work more closely with our third sector and faith colleagues, and we need to invest more money, not less, in community services provided by them, because that will help us to resolve the dilemma of how do we support greater numbers of people with less and less money, and how do we slow down the advancement of need. So personally, what does this mean to me as a leader? How do I work in partnership with others within and without my organisation? And how do I work with service users and staff and politicians? So for me as Helen, and for me as a Chief Executive, I'm really interested in systems leadership. None of us lead in a vacuum, and we all have, I believe, a moral and leadership obligation towards the system that we work within. Whether that's a system of public service, or a system that enables co-production, or service users leading and shaping service delivery. As a leader, I feel an obligation to shape the system I lead within, and to enable shaping the external market that I work within too. For me as a leader, I don't only lead in the now, I need to lead with others for the medium and long-term future too, shaping and influencing the journey forward. As a leader, I'm determined that the customer, client, service user, whatever phrase you want to use, their voice is loud and clear, and it influences and shapes service delivery and quality. I get very cross when people pay lip service to service users and their needs and concerns. So I'm really excited about the Citizens Panel that's been established in North Wales, and I can't wait to see and learn and understand how the citizens' voice is going to be reflected in our partnership forum discussions. Reflecting on the voice of the service user enables me to think about the culture of an organisation and how the way of working of an organisation either helps or inhibits its customers. The ethos and values that underpin and drive an organisation are the key here, as they set the behavioural framework and tone. I wonder if we've really got that right in local government. Is the customer king? I suspect not. In embracing the voice and empowerment of our service users, are we also embracing the changing ways we can support and enable people to manage their own care and their own decisions and their own lives? How about the digital journey for us as an organisation and our service users? So quietly, Wrexham Council is developing, rolling out our own individual accounts for people as they come in contact with us as a council. They can manage their own affairs and their own relationship with us. Now we understand that not everybody's willing to embrace that digital journey, so we're helping those folk who are finding it more challenging by running workshops in our customer contact centre. It's rather like the adverts you've seen for the Barclays Digital Eagles. We're doing that ourselves. And across North Wales too, collectively, we are developing our online access to information and choices for service users through our single point of access programme. This will enable online access to information, services and contacts, all in one place for the public and service professionals too. And I know it makes a difference. I know because I can tell you a story. I believe in the power of stories, and that's a leader is very important. Let me read you shortly a very short article from the local paper. When my husband was diagnosed with dementia, I was at my wit's end after 52 years of marriage as to where to go for help. A very dear friend got in touch with Single Point of Access for me. I was amazed when a couple of days later a lovely lady came and sorted everything I needed, and then a lady from the Citizens Advice Bureau called to arrange a day to come and help fill the forms in. A lovely man then rang to sort out groups my husband might fancy attending, and I couldn't believe it when a lady phoned me to come and see if I had any worries or questions. I had to write this, as social services always seem to get a bad press. I know I never might have my soulmate back, but with all the help I've been offered and my fantastic family and friends, I reckon I will make it. From a grateful carer. It works, doesn't it? So finally, personally, I've asked myself, what is at the core of my leadership to make things happen? And the essence, I think, is my passion and drive for the agenda. My focus on our core values and behaviours that lead from those values, and my emphasis on empowering others within my organisation to be the very best they can be, and then give the best of themselves to the people that we serve. These core values of my leadership behaviour have always been there. They're not just related to well-being, they're related to leadership. They've always been there, and I think alongside other factors, rather like my impatience for change, I think they're now there to help us empower the act, and we need to work collectively with a collective vision and purpose. So, closing the way I started, improving health and well-being of the population is not and cannot be the sole responsibility of any one organisation, or frankly any one leader, and the robust leadership that's needed must focus on the development of well-being based through health and social care services that reflect a multi-agency and a community-based approach, so we can truly live to our values and we can truly serve our people. Thank you.
Relay race. Okay. Thanks for asking me to give you my personal reflections and perceptions on leadership. I've been tasked with doing it in about 8 minutes, so this is going to be a bit of a challenge. Andrew Goodall mentioned this morning, actually, in his opening speech, about the challenging environment and context in which we're working. And clearly the context in which we're operating as leaders is really important to us. And I expect the context for all of us working in public sector is the same. There are requirements to raise standards, develop services, meet targets, reduce expenditure, increase productivity, increase efficiency, reduce the pay bill, and tackle poor performance. And I suppose in that context, the challenge for us is how we individually and collectively rise to meet those political and economic and the requirements really of the communities that we serve. So I'm just going to give a flavour of what sort of leaders we need and give my perspective on leadership. A couple of things just to kick off really. That context and the way in which we work is really important. So what sort of leaders do we need? Well, we probably need relationship builders, and we've heard a lot about building relationships this afternoon so far. We need to be leaders who are sensitive to multiple agendas, to walk the shoes of people who work in different organisations to us, to understand what it's like, what their issues are, what their aims, objectives are, what their constraints are, and how we find the common ground between us to move things forward. We need people who can work together to build a shared vision, and I'll come back to that in a moment. We need to be able to respect difference, develop talent in our own organisations for the people who are coming to take our roles and our jobs when we're moved on to do other things. We need people who can think innovatively about how to resolve some of the issues that we're facing, and perhaps last but definitely not least, we need people who are resilient, who can stick with what they believe in and can carry that through even when the going gets tough. So what sort of leadership skills do we need most? A little while ago, I read an article in the Harvard Business Review, and it had asked thousands of people what competencies they thought were most important in leaders today. And I just picked out the top 5. So the top 5 in this vote that they had in the Harvard Business Review was leaders who inspire and motivate others, leaders who display high integrity and honesty, people who can solve problems and analyse issues, leaders who are driven for results, but leaders who communicate powerfully and prolifically. And I always think that you can't do enough communication. So in terms of elements of leadership, I think there are 3 key elements to leadership. The first one is about being future focused. And it's a belief, and I think we heard about it a lot earlier this afternoon from Karen, a belief that things can be better and should be better and need to be better. And the things that are important to us, the things that we feel passionate about, the things we care about, the things that drive us to work in public service, the things that are important in our own value system, I suppose, those things will drive us to act both individually and collectively to resolve and tackle some of those things we feel passionately about. Thinking about the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, Wales Act 2014, it's built on some fundamental principles, putting individuals and their wellbeing outcomes at the centre of what we do, giving people voice and control over reaching those outcomes, supporting people to achieve their own well-being and measuring the success of this care and support that they receive, increasing preventative services and supporting communities to gain, retain their independence, and building on a strong partnership working between all agencies to do what we all want to do, which is to achieve better outcomes for people. I would argue that unless we actually feel passionately and actually believe in those principles, partnership working is really difficult to achieve. And the one thing that must galvanise us is actually belief that doing those things is the right things to do because we feel it in our values, but we actually know it's the right thing to do for our communities. So when we come together as senior leaders in our own local community, We do need to align in what we do, but why we are doing it is equally important. And I just wonder, and I've reflected on this, do we actually share views about what's important to us when we sit down, or do we get into structures, processes, and maybe even ticking a few boxes, but actually having the conversation about what do we collectively want to do differently in our own local area is really important. The second area is about being engaged and engaging, because you can't change what needs to be changed, the things that you believe can be better, without actually engaging others in the improvement that you want to see. So it's important that our commitment is demonstrated through energy, through enthusiasm. Leadership is about how we grow and develop those really good quality relationships between ourselves, between our teams, possibly between our organisations, but I think that comes with having good relationships. Building trust and building long-lasting, trusting relationships. And I know Karen mentioned earlier about people moving through organisations quite quickly. It's really difficult to develop long-lasting, trusting relationships when you've got a fast turnover of people, because you need to work together for a long time to build those relationships, I would say. But not just trust. I think you need to bring that energy and enthusiasm and create a sense of optimism that actually things can be different. We all know in our own roles that we meet what I call the shoulders down people. It's the people who actually can give you 1,000,001 reasons why something's not going to work, why they shouldn't try it. And you meet the other people who have actually got head up, shoulders up and step forward when you actually suggest that we might want to do something differently. So building optimism, energy and enthusiasm about things being different and our ability to work together to achieve change is really important. And a quote that I picked up, and I absolutely have no idea who said this, one of you might know, optimism is the one quality more associated with success and happiness than anything other. So let's bring optimism, energy and commitment to those partnership relationships. Our influence and impact actually does come from those relationships. Strong partnerships are built on strong relationships. So we need to listen carefully, spend as much time, if not more time, listening than we do talking. Work together to generate possibilities and ideas, and pursue opportunities for improvement together. The role of the creative leader is not to have all the ideas, it's to create a culture where everyone can have ideas and feel they are valued. That is really important in a collaborative context. So being future focused is my first quality around leadership, and being engaged and engaging second. And the final one is delivery, really, because you can have the first two, but actually unless something changes as a result of that energy and focus, then perhaps what was it all about? So something needs to change. We need to demonstrate difference and improvements, whether they're improved outcomes, whether they're raised standards, whether we've met a need that perhaps we weren't meeting previously, or improved population health. We need to be able to demonstrate through our collaborative endeavours that we've made a difference to the communities that we serve. And finally, because I think I'm okay for time, I took the opportunity on my 3.25-hour train journey this morning to read a part of a book that I've been meaning to read for a little while. And in the book, there was a quote which I quite liked, actually, so I've written it down. I thought I'd end with this. Leadership is much more of an art and a belief and a coalition of the heart than a set of things to do. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about partnership. The way I've structured what I'm going to say is around posing myself some questions, really, about how good my leadership is in the partnership field, And I hope that throws up the same sort of questions for you, really. You may have different answers, hopefully better than mine, actually, because I don't think mine's a bit more of a mea culpa, really, than anything else. But anyway, there we are. So I think, for me, partnerships work really well on the relationship basis, the one-to-ones, the ones that are built on personal knowledge of the person who's dealing with, and therefore, through them, the organisation they lead. We can make things happen in that way. But the challenge, I think, for me in the public services now, is that we need bigger and more multi-agency partnerships than before. Those one-to-one arrangements are not going to be sufficient for the scale of the challenge that we want and that we face. Not what we want, but we face. And so actually the structures of partnership and the way we interconnect in the sort of meeting structures becomes more important, unfortunately. And I was, several of my comments, various people talked to me about these meeting structures, lose the will to live, wading through treacle, and I found myself describing to my PA that I was going to a lose the will to live meeting the other day. So, you know, we go to these meetings, they make absolutely no progress. There's no verb, I think it was Karen's point. Absolutely, there's no verb in these meetings. And so, you know, it is about changing culture as much as anything, and actually it's probably the same culture change we need to face the challenges in our own organisation. So, first of all, I want to pose the question, I suppose, is do I ever deal with the whole issue of the partnership relationship, the way the group works, which I think Judith mentioned too. And actually we don't, we move straight onto task. I don't, I move straight onto task. Why am I here? I want to get the job done, out the door, back to the ranch, I can get on with the day job. We don't talk about where the power sits, who the roles are, what everybody wants from it, what everybody's bringing to it, what they want to take away from it, where they're going, all those sorts of things. And really, who's really calling the tune here? Because certainly for me, as a small non-statutory body, relatively speaking, in many partnerships, health or social care or the council are calling the tune. And actually, I've been invited to see how I can help them, not how they can help me. Because they've been told to do it by Welsh Government, actually, many times. That's why the partnership's been set up. So you think, well, let's get that on the table then. Let's be clear what the parameters are within which we can all work, get it out of the way, and then we can work on a genuine partnership behind that. So I don't do enough, I suppose, to make sure that in our partnership arrangements, we surface all this stuff and have a real conversation about what everybody wants and what everybody's bringing and what everybody's roles and responsibilities are and who's really in control and why and whether they should be. So I think that's one important point. You can look at the amount of time and effort I put into one-to-ones with the members of my management team. When they start work, I do an induction, I have a discussion about roles and responsibilities, and I'm coaching them how to overcome obstacles. I'm thinking about them as a person. I don't do any of that stuff at a partnership meeting around the group psychology, around what their roles and responsibilities are. Complete contrast. So actually I need to get better at that. I need to think more carefully about the fact we've got a group dynamic here that needs working on quite separately from the tasks that we're working on. So, and there's some people at these partnerships who are there just to keep an eye on it. Let's get that on the table. Why the hell are you here? You don't say anything. You just go away from the meetings with a note that nothing's happened, it's okay. It really, sorry to get that one in, but I thought I'd better get it. So, anyway, and also they're very well choreographed, when actually the incitement and innovation needs to come in from a lot of stuff working together on things that aren't choreographed. The real excitement is conversations you haven't got a hell of a clue where they're going. That's where real innovation comes from. Life-changing conversations, organisational changing conversations, not on a set of papers that have been pre-written with pre-recommendations. So that's the first point. I'm not doing very well on that, I'm afraid. That's number one, 0 out of 10. So secondly, do I really ensure that things are joining up at senior level before I expect people to join things up at junior level? And I'm afraid no, I don't, actually. I'm really poor at making sure that those things are joined up at senior level. So strategies aren't joined up, policies aren't joined up, funding isn't joined up, databases, oh my God, databases, they're not joined up. Child assessments, look at the way Welsh Government are doing child assessments. There's one for education, there's a new one for health visitors, there's a new one for education. What the hell are they doing? Why aren't we doing one assessment, for God's sake? they're actually going to redesign and introduce new, separate child assessments. And then we've got Families First assessments that are different again, different data systems. We did a count of preventative databases and found 10 in the space of about 10 minutes from different partners around the table, all collecting their own data for their own purpose about the same families. Crazy. So I don't do enough about that, but on the other hand, I expect the people at middle management level to work in partnership and display to me that they're doing so when I haven't done it myself. So I need to smack myself around the head and go and do something about that. So that's 0 out of 10 on that one, I'm afraid. So then, do I challenge funding silos with bravery? Do I go up to Welsh Government and say, this is absolute rubbish what you're telling us to do here? This is absolutely ridiculous. Why have we got 4 separate anti-poverty programmes supporting people, Families First, Communities First, and Flying Start? For goodness sake, 9 million quid coming into Torfai, and that's one shed load of money. It was all spent on family support workers and all the other rubbish that goes around it. And you said a rude word there. Rubbish around it was got rid of. We could get an awful lot of work done with that number of family support workers, couldn't we? We could do all that preventative work we're all talking about, get rid of all the bureaucracy. You know, why do we have to micromanage? They micromanage sums of money that I wouldn't dream of asking an admin assistant to justify to me, that we have to justify it to Welsh Government. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we should push back harder, and I should push back harder, and use the power that I have, and I suspect people in the room have, to say to Welsh Government, that's not acceptable anymore. You're telling us we want to work, be collaborative. Well, now you've got to do your bit, and for goodness sake, collaborate at your level. So give us one assessment of children in Wales, give us one set of funding and tell us what you want from it, and we'll deliver it. But we're not going to be micromanaged. We're not going to be told exactly what paragraphs need to go into a strategy anymore. We may not even have a strategy, because actually strategies these days are so out of date, about 3 months after you've written them, they're probably not worth having in many cases. You want an approach. So that's my third 0 out of 10, I'm afraid. I haven't done very well on that. But I'm working on it. That is what I'm working on it. And the fourth one is, do I put what I call oomph, but Karen called passion, which is probably a better word. I call it oomph. I think partnerships really, really lack oomph. And oomph makes everything happen, doesn't it? I mean, look at what she achieved. Solely about the drive and passion of the personality. We really got, that's what makes things happen all the way across the board. If we don't have that, it just doesn't happen. And partnerships move at a snail's pace. 1975, we're talking about early intervention. 1975, yes, I was born there, but some people in the room probably weren't. But, you know, but meetings aren't frequent enough, there's no momentum, we've forgotten what we were going to do when we went to the last meeting, we only get the minutes the day before, it's, you know, just, why? We won't change anything like that. We really got to give them some oomph, and to be honest, I don't feel I do put enough effort and time and thinking and planning into partnerships unless I'm the chair of them. No, but that's fair enough, I mean that is the role of the chair, but actually I don't support the other chairs enough. You know, if I'm a chair, I mean, I'm just taking on chair of South East Wales Safeguard and Children's Board, and I put a lot of time to thinking with the business manager about where it's going, what its direction is, what we need to cover in the next month, year or two. So, you know, I've done some planning and put in actually quite a lot of time, far more than Simon Birch promised me I would have to, which I've got something to pick up with him about. But anyway, there we are. But, you know, I don't allow any preparation time or any reviewing time after partnership meetings. I rush in with the papers, sit down, do the meeting, go away, put them aside, pick them up the day before the next meeting, perhaps if they're lucky, perhaps an hour before the meeting, or more likely 1 minute before the next meeting, and think, well, what's happened? Well, actually, nothing's happened because I haven't done anything. So, you know, it's not good. I'm afraid there's a 0 out of 10 there. And whereas back at the ranch, I do a lot of nudging, checking, planning, reassuring, coaching, boosting, removing obstacles, all day long. That's what we do as leaders in our own organisations. We help people make things happen, we get things out of the way, and so on and so forth. I don't really think I do that enough in partnerships. I don't help the chair to do that and in a way that I should. And, you know, do I support middle managers enough in partnership working? Because that conflict, ambiguity and sort of uncertainty that was being talked about by Karen earlier on, that they face it more than I do. I thrive on that sort of environment. But actually, many of our middle managers don't. And they've also got other pressures. And we can send them conflicting messages very easily that actually, on the one hand, we want them to work in partnership. It's really important to us. But actually, have you done those child protection figures yet? Or have you got those rent arrears down yet? Or have you got the number of A&E admissions down yet? So, that's a mixed message. Which is more important? Well, actually, your real performance is measured on the day job, not on the partnership working. Because that's the default position we get, because that's the pressure we face as leaders, is the accountability for our own organisation's performance. And that's the people breathing down our neck, whether it be auditors, inspectors, or politicians, or whatever. So, there's quite a lot of those middle managers being asked to be a bit schizophrenic, and we're not very good, perhaps, or I'm not very good, of as much as I should be, perhaps, of giving them reassurance. I'm slightly better at this. I might get 3 or 4 out of 10 on this one, but I don't really follow up with them and just make sure that they feel comfortable with what they're doing, how it works with what they are being asked to do back at the ranch, and give more reassuring work. Conscious of time, I just want to jump to one of them, I suppose, is around the am I anxious about lack of control that genuine partnership entails? And I think actually I do quite well on this one, because actually I'd love to get rid of all this responsibility and pass it to somebody else. But I think going back to that point, I think there are insufficient free-ranging conversations at partnerships where we let go of our own structures and our own organisations and have a conversation around the citizen-focused issue that the partnership's there to deal with, and come up with a different model, or have the opportunity to come up with a completely different and innovative model of approach that might be something completely transformational. We're actually really very stuck, or I am, in the sort of routes we're already in. And we need to get partnerships to go where no one's gone before, and not control them to the point of extinction. And make sure, I suppose, alongside that citizens and the impact on them is really the focus of our activity. And my real worry, I suppose, in the next few years is that we focus more and more on governance and structures because of local government reorganisation. And you can already see that, actually, that all the talk in some areas is about that, not about, well, what about the citizens in all this? What's going to happen to services? Because actually that's more important. So there we are. I don't think I've done very well in my end of term report, but I thought, that might throw up a few questions for you really around what role we should play. I think it's far more difficult to be a leader in a partnership environment than in your own organisation. But the same skills are required. But I think the real issue is how much time and effort we put into it, and whether we really do devote enough time to making those structures work and making them move at the speed with which they need to make some real difference. Thank you.
Thank you to the three of you for being honest and reflective about your own vision and also some of your own experiences. I'm sure there will be questions and comments. We started late, so I think so we have 5 minutes just to have a bit of a dialogue going between people who I'm sure have some reflections from what they've heard from Karen and the panel. Anybody got a burning question to ask one of the panel members, responding to the challenge that we've collectively got? Stuart?
Helen and Judith both referred to doing the right thing, and I think Duncan did by inference without connection specifically. I'm really interested how, and it's probably for what really, how would you ensure, how do you ensure to know that they're going to be protected if they do the right thing rather than simply doing things right?
Who's going to start? Judith.
I'll go first, yeah. I think creating that culture where it's okay to try and test things and to acknowledge, or as an organisation, that not everything that you try and test will work out in the way that you expect it is really important. I think through trying to engage staff in some kind of continuous improvement type approach to what they do. Yes, you can obviously do elements of training and group work and leadership, and give them leadership skills development as well. I think it's about demonstrating that through evidence when something doesn't perhaps go in the way that you would have wanted it to do, is how you react to that as an organisation, how you deal with it, how you communicate, how you respond, both at an individual level with the individual or teams, but also then at an organisational level, because I think making sure that teams know that the organisation, I mean, clearly if somebody's done something significantly wrong that they, that's really against their codes of practice or whatever, clearly that has to be dealt with, and dealing with poor performance still needs to be dealt with. But people who've made a genuine mistake, or things haven't gone in the way that they would want it to as part of doing their job and trying something new, I think it's really important that the organisation protects them from that. And that's something about how you change the culture of the organisation, how you support that happening, and how you almost give permission to people to just not to do their job, but to change their job as well.
Helen or Duncan?
Putting aside the fact that we're not talking about poor performance here, and we're not talking about some malicious act, we're talking about, I'm interpreting, Stuart was saying, I'm interpreting what you're saying, that somebody's believed themselves that they've done the right thing and it's gone slightly pear-shaped, is the way I'm interpreting it. I agree with Judith about allowing people to try and test and having a culture, but for me it's about the values set in the organisation, so it starts right at the top in saying you can try things, but it is about your intent and your motivation when you're doing things. So it's maintaining the integrity within your professional status, to allow people to have a go within the frameworks, the safe frameworks that you establish for them, because we want to allow people to have ownership for their own actions and ownership of their own behaviour, and empower people themselves. Otherwise we end up with organisations where the decision making is bounced up all the time, it becomes blame, and it becomes a very negative environment. So I would want to be pushing down responsibility and accountability, but linking it to values and behaviours. And also, I think Judith's right, it's about how, for frontline managers and as leaders, we react when things happen like that in an organisation. If we talk about respecting the fact that people have had a go and that they've been honest that it's not gone well, and we're now going to work through the ramifications of that, and we're going to think about the lessons learned, and we're going to support people, and that's emotional support as well as professional support, then I don't think it's a difficult situation when you want to encourage people.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, I think absolutely important to state that that's the culture of the organisation, but I think, and I think it's important to follow that through, I suppose, with the point Helen made around supporting people if something goes wrong, but also celebrating things that go right, publicly celebrating things that go right, and so setting up a culture where there's actually an acknowledgement that somebody's had a great idea, it's gone to fruition, it's worked, fantastic. Let's have more of these. For me, the leadership role is, I suppose, to create the space in which other people can lead, and that's more of an important role than actually leading from the front. It's actually just, the job is to create some space. And I think there are big advantages in having innovation space, to give people space to think, whether that be a different physical space or the space that they're in their diaries to think, because I think that the whole email culture and everything that's going on is making it harder and harder to get people together in creative conversations to be able to think, and reflective practice of that sort. And we need to protect it, because it will disappear. It's already disappearing, and we need to absolutely protect it because it's so important to pretty much everything we do, innovation-wise, but also safety-wise. If you don't stop and think, review where you are, what the position is, look back, check, then things will go badly wrong. So we're losing that space. We need to make sure we protect it.
And I think what struck me this afternoon was when you were speaking and reflecting back on Karen, that whole sense of reminding ourselves about purpose all the time. So if you lose yourself, which is I think behind your point as well, if you lose yourself in the language of the governance or the structure or the partnership or the meeting, it's very easy for us to lose sight of the purpose, and how can we then communicate that purpose to everybody else, which then helps the change context. So thank you, Stuart. Any other questions? Thank you. John, thank you.
Why do you think the health and social care sector of Wales hasn't made more use of health flexibility legislation in this future partnerships?
Oh, who's going to start with that then? Does that sound like one for you, Judith?
I probably would say I have no idea, to be quite honest. Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I don't know either. No. We are very candid here. Yeah, no, I genuinely have no idea. I mean, in the area I work, I don't know if I'm allowed to use the word went, in that area, we have used the Section 33 requirements, abilities, quite extensively, but I do think there is a lot further we should and could go. And I do come back to it's a very process-orientated bit of legislation. And I actually think that if we go back to actually what we are trying to achieve as a partnership, I actually think we could achieve a lot of things without needing to resort to the Section 33, because actually, although we might put some government around it, I actually think there is so much more that we could do if we had a collective will to actually pool our resources together and do something really different.
And I think that was behind your point at the beginning, Sue, wasn't it? Not to focus on the legislative remit or a Section 33, but to think about the bigger shared goal that we've got. So thank you for that.
I wonder if we're scared. As organisations, we're scared of the commitment, of making a commitment like that.
Of letting go?
Yeah, well, of letting go, of making a formalised transactional commitment together in that way.
Yeah. There are nods around the room. So I
probably should have put that into my, because I think one of the things you do need working in partnership across public service organisations, because that's the context we're talking about today, is courage. I actually think you need a lot of courage to actually, and it does go back to your relationships with the people that you're working with, trust that you've built, but also what binds you, what is it that makes you want to do this, and then just do it. But it does take some courage, it does absolutely take courage.
Thank you. One more or else, okay.
One of the big things that we all have to do is make major changes over the next few years. And it's going to be critical on the part of leaders to support that development. You mentioned this word trust a couple of times. How do you create trust which is meaningful, which allows you to go the one step further in organisations where you're not employed? How do you do that?
This is my personal view. My personal view is that clearly you have to build purposeful relationships, and the trust comes from, I think, an alignment of personal values and what you're collectively trying to achieve. So having the conversation with people about what do you want to achieve, what is important to you, what do you feel so passionately about, that actually we can align around that passion, that energy and commitment, and actually together we'll trust each other, because actually we both want or collectively want the same thing on this. And I personally find that people who come to talk to me about they want to work in partnership with you, Health Board, because together we can save money, that switches me off straight away. People who come to talk to me about We want to work with you, Health Board, because actually I think we could make a real difference working together. You might have to pull some money, or you might have to put a bit of money into this. Actually, I listen to that much more, and because those individuals come from the same place that I come in terms of what my personal values are about public service, improvement and outcomes, and not just coming at it from a financial perspective.
Okay.
Well, I suppose, is trusting organisations any different from trusting individuals? In that sense, you know, we trust individuals because they listen to us, they do what they say they're going to do, you know, they're authentic, you can see that they're walking the talk, and not doing things behind our backs or whatever, and so, you know, and are willing to adjust what they do because of what we're doing, and vice versa. So, is it any different for organisations? I don't think it is really. You know, so that's we work with organisations that are willing to do that, and as Judith said, they've got a shared set of values and purpose, and so we can do business together.
Have you got anything to add?
I think just in 4 words, it's about the environment that you set up and you create. It's about the relationships that we've just been talking about. It's about the language that we use. So is it about we and us? Are we using the words trust, values, behaviour? And as a leader, it's about ensuring that you are real and authentic and are trustworthy, because you have to earn people's trust, and then you have to keep people's trust, and you have to keep doing that all the time, because it instantly goes and you can never get it back.
Can I just add one other point? I think the fact that we don't do all that work in advance on partnerships to clarify where everyone's coming from, what their constraints are, and all those things, actually stops that trust developing in some of those arrangements, which is unfortunate. Because unless we're all clear around the table what's going to stop us doing stuff, and what other hidden partners there are at the table who are not there, but whose tune we are dancing to, who are going to stop us doing certain things, you can't really develop an understanding, common understanding what can be achieved. So, you know, not doing this piece of work around the health of the partnership itself almost doesn't help with trust relationship build, which you can do on a one-to-one basis, because you do that all the time. You understand where someone's role is. I mean, I see Sue regularly in her role as Chief Officer, so I know exactly what constraints she's having to work to, and she'll tell me if there are others.
And I think several of you mentioned it in your presentations as well, about the being authentic and communicating to other people that we're serious and we do believe that it can be different and we want to make a difference. And that generates trust all round, because that is about that shared sense of commitment to the purpose. Thank you, the three of you, for being so honest and for contributing to what we need to continue to discuss, which is how we demonstrate our leadership, how do we deliver our leadership, and how we develop the leadership for the future. Diolch yn fawr iawn.